For many reasons, ceramics and pottery have always had a key role throughout history. The first and foremost of these reasons is that clay, from which ceramics and pottery is made, is found all around the globe. Clay has been long used for the objects with which food is prepared and served. In constant use by humans ever since the Neolithic, clay has proven to be a kind of fossil, thereby allowing us to date historical developments.
Esa sintonía que ha existido entre la humanidad y la cerámica.
Documents show that there were jug factories in Manises, as there were in Paterna, in the early 14th century. These jugs were used mainly to store and transport wine or oil.
Estas noticias se remontan a principios del siglo XIV.
Potter's clay has been used to make a wide variety of objects that have made life easier. Among these objects we have crockery, which until not long ago was composed of plates, bowls and big containers used to preserve food. There were also other purely decorative objects such as figurines, plaques and wall tiles. However, we cannot forget ceramics applied to architecture and the paradigm of glazed tiles, along with ceramic flooring. These elements have embellished houses over the ages. Ceramics has been a daily item in people's lives and has always been part of the house. It was embedded in it.
Desde muy antiguo, la cerámica estaba incorporada a la vivienda, formaba parte de ella, era parte de...
Ceramics was used as a decorative element in flooring,
tanto en el suelo como en paredes,
as well as in walls in balconies. Ceramics and pottery were present in kitchens in the form of cooking pots, crockery plates, dishes and all kinds of household objects. Even the drinking jug by the door of the house. Ceramics was present even in the most private aspects of people's lives. The whole point is that every human society has its needs, and ceramics, being easily molded, is a material that can be easily shaped in order to fit the needs of each moment. In medieval times, for instance, metallic ware could be replaced by its cheaper ceramics counterpart. One could thus avoid using metal, which was far more expensive. Each age has had its needs, and ceramics has satisfied them. Looking back, we can now appreciate the widespread use of ceramics. In this wainscot, we can see represented kitchen scenes, scenes where ceramics and pottery are used in the preparation of food.
Se representan escenas de cocina, escenas donde, entre otros utensilios, se utiliza la cerámica para preparar alimentos.
These kinds of tiled kitchens were particularly important in 18th century noble homes. They recreated a set of mirrors where daily life was depicted as it actually happened. The ceramics of Manises in the 14th century, and especially in the 15th century, is characterized by the use of blue and the making of lusterwares. Lusterware was in high demand by the high-class families of the time. It somehow imitated the white enamel of Chinese porcelain that was being imported from the East. On the other hand, lusterware also imitated the golden overglaze of real golden dishware. The famous Obra Dorada of Manises is based on the technique used in lusterware. Obviously, it was called Obra Dorada back in medieval times. The technique for lusterware is a complex one, which requires 3 firing steps. Once the piece is lathed and solidified, it is baked for the first time. A coating of white tin is then applied. After the second firing of the piece, decorations are painted on it with a solution of silver sulfur and copper, which also has lots of iron oxide. The solution is mixed and applied using a brush. Then the piece is baked for the third time at a lower temperature, ranging from 550 to 600 degrees centigrade. When you take it out, the kiln has been completely blackened and it must be cleaned. After cleaning, you can see its characteristic metallic glaze, as if it was made of copper or even gold, hence the name of the technique. Already at the beginning of the 15th century, there were big pieces of lusterware being manufactured. The brazier behind me is an example. These pieces usually depict the coat of arms of the family that had ordered them. Some of those buyers were Italian merchants working in the Spanish coast. Most of them were from Tuscany. But there were also Ligurians who ordered pieces with their coats of arms on them. Not just merchants, but also popes and kings ordered tiles with their coats of arms. The coats of arms depicted on these pieces enable us to know which were the most important families in Europe. Manises ceramics is directly related to the growth of Valencia as a city and as the main port on the Mediterranean Sea. It is due to this that the ceramics of Manises plays a major role in the history of ceramics worldwide. At the end of the 15th century, Manises pieces were quite popular and still ordered by the most important families. There were orders placed by the Medicis at the beginning of the 15th century. The Borgias also took many pieces from Manises to Italy. However, the Italians soon began to develop polychrome on ceramics, and this finally displaced Manises as a producer of ceramics. By the end of the 15th century, the Italians had mastered polychrome ceramics techniques and began to use ochres, siennas, light greens and yellows. This was what finally ousted Manises ceramics. In the 16th century, the ceramics industry in Manises found itself in a crisis that actually worsened in the 16th and 17th centuries. The 19th century, however, was a period of renaissance, mainly due to industrialization and also the presence of new styles and tastes. This is where the glazed tile industry began. It was very important, especially from the first half of the 20th century until the late 60s. Ceramics in architecture was linked to the need for hygiene, which is the need to make homes and cities more and more hygienic. In the second half of the 19th century, glazed tiles were at their peak, precisely because of their use in train stations, hospitals and homes. It was not only used in kitchens and bathrooms, but also in paving and skirting boards. This is how Manises' industry met the need to make homes more livable.
Al mismo tiempo, Manises
At the same time, Manises was renewing its repertoire of what was traditional ceramics. Traditional pottery, dishes, vases and so on were transformed into new and innovative pieces inspired in the 18th century tradition of Alcora. New elements were also introduced, elements that the 20th century demanded. Among these new elements, there are many non-traditional sanitary objects, like the famous sinais, that were in fact water filters invented in Manises, and were very important for the industry of the 20s and 30s. The sinai was so significant in Manises that specialized designers were hired. It must be noted that after 5 centuries of making ceramic pieces, the people of Manises were mostly employed in pottery making. More than half of the population had a job related to ceramics, and this deeply influenced their way of life and even their personality. This was the case until the beginning of the 20th century, a time when the ceramics from the 19th century was even more important than it had been in medieval times, in commercial terms. Ceramic products were not as demanded by the dominant classes as before, but nonetheless created more jobs than ever. Once more, Manises became an important hive of activity, attracting large numbers of workers, technicians, students and artists from the Fine Arts School of San Carlos. They came to Manises to develop their designs and to collaborate with the industry so that its standards were to match those of other advanced countries in Europe. There were lots of workshops in Manises and its surroundings, in Quart de Poblet, Ribarroja, Villa Marchante, even in the town of Pedralba. There were surely more than 500 workshops. Ceramics was everything for the people of Manises. At the beginning of the century, there were more than 100 factories. In Manises, you knew that you would toil, work hard with ceramics, from birth right through till your death. Women painted and men molded clay. There were packers and representatives. Those who actually left Manises usually became ceramics wholesalers. Life in Manises revolved around ceramics for 600 years. There has always been ceramics in Manises. Lots of people came here to work. Paterna and Ribarroja were two of the cities linked to Manises in terms of industry. It was very pleasing, to see the workers on bicycles going to and from the workshops. When you stepped into the street in Manises, you could very well sense the air. You could feel ceramics in the air. Every day, cartloads of firewood from Mogente, Montesa, El Rebollar and Buñol would go by. You can't imagine the amount of firewood that was burnt in Manises. There hasn't been a day in Manises when you couldn't see the smoke up there in the sky. It was traditional to teach young ladies how to paint ceramic pieces. They started with just a few drops of paint, and eventually they became true masters in their art. Apart from the women working in factories, it was a common thing to see women painting at home. At the same time, they would take care of their house and, of course, of their families. It is these women who have conveyed the tradition of ceramics from mothers to daughters and then to granddaughters. The kind of production we see today in Manises is the culmination of its tradition. Without a doubt, after 7 centuries, the tradition has surely changed a lot. The ceramics of Manises has always reflected the aesthetic language prevailing on the market. This has been a constant throughout history. Manises had to adapt to the demand of each moment in history. However, this doesn't mean that the technique of our ancestors had to disappear. They simply remain as an important reference point. Of course, part of the production must be adapted to the needs of today's consumer. A piece of ceramics will last forever. It is something that is handed down to your son and from son to grandson. Imbued with artistic value, made with the hands of a highly skilled artisan, it will become part of the owner's legacy. We are talking about an object that, aside from its intrinsic material value, has an artistic and sentimental value as well.
Material tiene también un valor artístico y un valor, digamos, sentimental.
Traditional ceramics bonds us to the past with the knowledge accumulated over centuries. It links us to the magic of the past, the creativity and work of all those craftsmen who have kept alive the tradition, still producing exceptional pieces. It is not only in Manises that we appreciate and keep alive the works, knowledge and techniques of past ages. Chinese emperors imitated the Sung pieces that belonged to their ancestors. They asked their craftsmen to learn how to make them. That kind of knowledge creates a strong bond between today and the past. You know, if you'd like to own a little work of art, buy ceramics made in Manises.